Benim ismim Yasemin Erdal. Webinarlarımızı takip edenler artık tanımıştır sanırım. Bugün 9 seriden oluşan webinarlar serisinin 5.siyle sizlerle beraberiz. Ve bu etkinlik Türkiye Cumhuriyeti ve Avrupa Birliği tarafından finanse edilen Sanayi Bakanlığı Rekabetçi Sektörler Programı kapsamında finanse edilen bir Avrupa Birliği projesi olan Ufuk 2020'de Türkiye Faz 2 projesi kapsamında düzenlenen bir etkinlik. Ve etkinliğin amacı sizleri H2020 programı altındaki eski adı KOBİ aracı, yeni adı Accelerator olan programla ilgili bilgilendirmek. Biliyorsunuz 7 Ekim'de son bir cut-off var. Bu programın son cut-off başvuru tarihi 7 Ekim. O yüzden bu webinarın daha öncekilerden şöyle bir farkı var. Kısaca teklif dokümanında başvurmanız gereken 3 başlık olan bu Excellence, Impact ve Implementation ile ilgili bilgi sağladıktan sonra soru cevap kısmı ağırlıklı olacak. Çünkü amacımız tekliflerinizin artık bir yere kadar geldiğini düşünüyoruz, bir aşamaya kadar geldiğini düşünüyoruz. Ve teklifi hazırlarken karşılaştığımız spesifik sorularla ilgili yardımcı olabilmek sizlere. Sorularınızı webinar esnasında chatbox'tan yazabilirsiniz. Canlı olarak buradan cevaplamaya çalışacağız. Cevaplayamadığımız soruları da daha sonra etkinliğin sonunda sizlerle paylaşacağımız web sitesinde hepsinin cevabını paylaşmış olacağız. Etkinliğimiz yaklaşık 2 saat sürecek, 12'ye kadar ve daha sonra bir yarım saat bu platform sizin sorularınız için açık kalacak. O yüzden etkinlik bittikten sonra da sorularınızı sormaya devam edebilirsiniz. Yine etkinlikle ilgili tüm prezentasyon sunumları ve kayıtlar, Zoom kayıtları web sitemizde paylaşılıyor olacak. Onlara da ulaşabilirsiniz. Bugün sizlerle benimle beraber sizlerle İngiliz uzmanımız Philip Sowden, Yunanistan'dan uzmanımız Grigoris Hatchikostas ve TÜBİTAK'tan uzmanımız Merve Diyar Hanım beraber olacaklar. Onlar da sizlerle hem konu paylaşımı hem de soru cevap kısmında olacak. Ben şimdi sözü Merve Hanım'a bırakıyorum. Umarım faydalı bir etkinlik olur. İlerleyen dakikalarda tekrar görüşmek üzere. Hoşçakalın.
Teşekkürler Yasemin Hanım. Günaydın. Hepiniz hoş geldiniz online etkinliğimize. Çoğunuzun tanıdığı gibi ben Merve Diyar. Sunuma başlamadan önce ben de Yasemin Hanım gibi 7 Ekim'de başvuracak firmalarımız burada bugün oldukça fazla. Ayrıca 2021 Horizon Europe için de hızlandırıcı programa başvurmayı düşünen firmalarımız da bugün bizlere katılacak. Onların hepsine öncelikle başarılar diliyorum. Lütfen sorularınızı sormakta çekinmeyin. Hem etkinlik sırasınca hem de etkinliğimizin sonunda soru cevap kısmında. Daha sonradan aklınıza takılan bir soru olursa bizlere mail atabilirsiniz. Ekranda görebileceğiniz gibi bizim mail adresimiz scp@tubitak.com.tr. Her zaman bize ulaşabilirsiniz. Good morning, you all. Once more again. I am Merve Diyar. I am National Contact Point in TÜBİTAK. I am work with Tarık Şahin as SME and Access Risk Finance National Contact Point. First of all, I want to thank Grigoris, Philip, Yasemin Hanım, Kemal Bey ve and Tuğçe Hanım for their great efforts and valuable contribution to all this organization of events. Next, please. As most of you know, this is our official Horizon 2020 webpage. You can easily find all the documents, news, events regarding the Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, of course. You can also subscribe our website. I strongly suggest to subscribe our website because we are on the way to Horizon Europe programs. As we informed by the European Commission, we always make news about this updated information about Horizon Europe, and there's a huge call named Green Deal. You may also look at Green Deal via our website. At the right of this page, you can find SME page regarding the Horizon 2020 program. And next, please. This is SME web page. as you subscribe our website, you can choose SME as a special interest. In this page, you can find all the information about mainly Accelerator. All the documents, all events are in here. Before events, we always make announcements about the events, make news about the events. After the events, we also make news about the presentation and YouTube link about these events. So I one more again, I strongly suggest to subscribe our websites. Next, please. In the right of the page, there's who is who session. As I mentioned before, we work with, I work with Tarık Şahin and in this who is who session, you can always find other initial contact points about the other calls in Horizon 2020 program. And you can also take a look our telephone and email addresses in here. In here, in this page, as TÜBİTAK, we offer some support apps. You can find all the criteria and information in this page also. Next, please. Next. So, most importantly and lastly, there is a competitive calls for third parties. These calls actually are designed for all stakeholders in Horizon 2020 programs, but especially for SMEs in different sectors. The aim of these programs, these calls, is to think of the thinking to market. So please take a look at this calls via this QR code. There's always more than 10 calls in this page. If you have further questions about this course, please contact with me about this course and also for Accelerator, of course. Please take a look and apply for them. This is a great start for SMEs in this Horizon 2020 programs and maybe Horizon Europe program. Next, please. I would like to finish programs. You can always reach us via these email addresses. Thank you for listening.
Merhaba. Günaydın, hoş geldiniz. Great to speak to you again. My name is Philip Souden. Next, please. And you may be familiar with me by now. This is our 5th webinar. Just to recap, we have to give a quick recap, by the way, on Horizon 2020 because there may be new participants. I intend covering it briefly and then over to the main business of the day. My background is in manufacturing, but I've worked with SMEs for over 30 years in 35 different countries, and I'm quite familiar with Turkey. I've been here for the last 6 years on and off and visited, I guess, well over 100 SMEs. Next. Next, there we are. There's our team of experts. You have 3 today. The others, Odysseus deals with IP and financial issues. Alexandra, our team leader, deals with the interface with universities and other organizations. Next. I said it's our 5th webinar. These are the first 3, all on different topics. We're building now quite a library of information on Accelerator. It's worth taking a look on our website. You see they deal with different topics: business planning, technology readiness. Next. And more recently, we've looked at financial issues. This is a very popular area, the annexes on finances. And of course, today is a Q&A session ahead of the 7th of October cutoff. Next. So our project, taking Horizon 2020, just briefly, what do we cover? Next. the main objective, supporting Turkish participation in Horizon 20 in all different sorts of areas, science, technology, universities, individual SMEs, and we're here until the first quarter of next year. We're here to help. You've got hundreds of years of experience, so please use it through our website and through our events. Next. Our events, next, you see we cover training events, this being one of them, webinars, but lots of different topics. And as we move towards Horizon Europe, there will be more training specifically on Horizon Europe. The networking through brokerage, international visits, when we can make them. At the moment, they're being done virtually. Conferences, info days. Next. SME support, this is my area I'm responsible for, so we're supporting some SMEs directly. I hope you're listening today and watching today. Project writing, training, pitching, and so forth. And finally, we have tools such as websites, help desk training, and so on. So next, please. But let's take a look quickly at Horizon 2020 and as it moves into Horizon Europe. Next. So Horizon 2020 runs to the end of this year, and then we're into Horizon Europe for the next 6 years. These, of course, are framework programs. They follow one from the other. Why participate? It's not just about money. It gives you a much wider access to current and future technologies, regulations, new partners, different countries. There's a whole range of things that come. And of course, it helps to train you in writing a good proposal as well. Next. Of course, the main aim is to improve the economic and social impact of the countries involved. Of course, the money is important. Horizon 2020 had 80 billion, Horizon Europe scheduled for 90 billion. This may be reduced though with the effect of COVID and one particular country leaving the European Union. So the funding, there it is. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Grants of up to 70%. This blended finance, which has been a subject of great interest and debate, using private sector and now European Union venture capital funds to help develop projects. Coaching and mentoring is there, of course. Next. So let's take a quick sprint through Accelerator. Next. Traditionally, development has been underfunded. You see on the left of the screen that research is heavily invested in with public funds and universities, public as well, of course. And on the right, once an idea looks like a commercial success, of course, the private sector step in. But in the middle is a gap of funding, which is well recognized, and this is where the commission programs fit in. The difference with Accelerator is, next, it covers a much wider area, taking it from development and into the early stages of commercialization, all the way through to private sector funding. So a radical change here under Accelerator and under Horizon Europe. Next. So the key criteria, it's for SMEs with less than 250 people and up to 50 million turnover. That's because some businesses are highly automated, so they can have less than 250 employees and exceed 100 million or 50 million turnover. So high growth, disruptive, close to market, scalable, and at the prototype stage. Quick reminder of those. Next. High growth, it's relevant to Europe as a whole, and it shows that it can grow as an SME. It can grow into a bigger business. So cross-border, high growth, what we're saying here is that it stands every chance of success. Next. So people say, 20% growth a year, there's no set measure for this, but they're looking for evidence in your proposal. You have the potential for high growth as a business and of course with your project. So as it's not well explained, it's up to you to explain it and convince those evaluators that you are a high growth business with potential. Next. 4 related criteria, the project must be disruptive, close to market, scalable, and at the prototype stage. So technology readiness level 6 and above, this is something well explained in documentation. Incremental, step change, disruptive, the 3 main areas of innovation. They're looking for the disruptive one, the one that's going to change the world, the big idea falling back from that step change, something that's significant and will give you a bigger market share, but not really incremental. Small changes to something that exists is not what they're about. They're about disruptive innovation. Next. So close to market, I mentioned TRL6, technology readiness level. That's the prototype stage, and then all the way through to demonstrated technology of a kind and the full commercial system. Next. You'll have seen this table before, setting out the different TRLs, I think developed by NASA. Next. And this is the areas that they're interested in from 6 to 9 and not below. That's research funding. It's not what this is about. So if you write a proposal for research funding, it's going to fall behind those that are offering a commercial opportunity. Next. Scalable, able to move from final prototype into mass production. It goes without saying. If it's about commercializing, it must be able to go into mass manufacture. Next. I've already mentioned prototype stage. Next. So some big shifts. It's all about commercial prospects, not about research. The emphasis is on what impact it will make in the market, and the excellence of the idea. They've done away with thematic areas, so it's completely open, and the calls are open, but they have 4 cut-off dates a year. And of course, we said the next one is the 7th of October. More private sector financing available, and the EC can also support ideas from their own funds to get them to a point where the private sector are interested. It's all about SMEs needing one last push to get something into market. Next. Let's not forget the European Green Deal. This is driving much of the European policy at the moment, the need for supporting environmentally friendly areas, but of course that fits with many of the new technologies, battery technology, reducing carbon emissions and so forth. €1 trillion, that's a million, that's public and private sector money they expect to be invested by 2030. So it's a huge area for innovative ideas with a green tag. Next. So the 3 key criteria, which is the purpose of today's webinar: excellence, impact and implementation. What we'll do now, I'll give you the EC version of what they're looking for. Yasmin and I, but particularly Yasmin, have had much experience with Turkish SMEs. I shall ask Yasmin to comment on her experience under these topics, and then Grigoris will give us his input on the inside track of what it means. So beginning with excellence, next. The EC are asking, is the project beyond the current state of the art? Is it highly innovative? Is it novel, disruptive, or at least step change? Is it subject to competition? Why is your product better? Is it unique? Does it have a unique selling point? And is it subject to an element of risk? Now, this last point is very important. The Commission see themselves as funding the riskiest part of a project in order to make it interesting to the commercial investors. So they're an unusual investor in that they want to support risk, but not too much risk, of course, enough to get it to a commercial proposition. So that's the official need. Next. So Yasmin, your experience.
Thank you, Philip. First of all, I would like to state that I have been an evaluator for the program for 4 years, and I have evaluated more than 300 projects from different European countries. And when we compare the Turkish companies' success with the European companies, we see that we are a bit behind the average of the Europe. And in terms of excellence, there are some reasons, of course, why we do not as good as Europe. First of all, I would like to start with the positives. In the recent years, especially, there has been huge amount of government funding in the research and innovation ecosystem of Turkey. So there has been excellent research studies going on. And we have really qualified engineers, really good research activities are going in technoparks, in university research institutes. These are the good things, of course, but if we look at the negatives, next please, Grigoris. Unfortunately, there is a bit too much reliance on the government grants and not the end product. There are really a huge amount of government funding in Turkey, but unfortunately, most of this funding is provided for research and development activities, which means that the activities until the prototype level is ready. So it's good and bad because after the prototype is ready, the technology companies have problems in accessing to further funding. So when they don't access to further funding, they just leave their projects at the prototype level and they apply to another government grant, national grant. So they keep they got stuck in this in the cycle of doing just research, but not creating a product at the end. I think this is one of the biggest problems. Too much effort on research, but unfortunately, when it comes to technology transfer, when it comes to producing a product, the Turkish companies may leave some problems. And I think they have to be more product oriented instead of staying as a project company and just getting involved in research activities. This is, I think, one of the biggest problems. Another problem is that the research in the technology companies in Turkey are not market driven, but it is more capability driven. For example, the good engineers, they have some competence in a specific field and they start their project based on their capability. But the research should start and should be shaped from a need in the global markets. First, you have to observe some gap in the market, and then you should shape your research activities to meet that need in the market, so that it will be preferred by the customers, by the end users. I think this is another problem. So they should be more, they should start their research activities starting from the market needs and the global market need. This is the first point. And the second point is that they should be more aware of what's going on in the global research ecosystem and global markets. And they should know their competitors much better. They should know much better what their competitors or what other research companies are involved in other countries. And they should, I think, enhance their vision, and they should start the research keeping this in mind. Thank you. Next, Grigoris.
Okay. Yes, this is the time that I'm jumping into the discussion. I will keep it quick because the purpose of this webinar is to give you the floor, to let you ask questions. So please feel free to ask your questions as we speak. But what I would like to do, I would like to recap section 1 by reminding you one by one the criteria and then putting some highlight on the topics that we need to highlight. So, first of all, please remember, we are talking about high potential innovation ideas that are also incorporating a high level of risk. This means that the ideas need to be risky. So don't be afraid of hiding the risky part behind the carpet. Second, again, please remember, technology readiness level 6, but that's not only enough. You need to have a very clear path how you are going to move from 6 to 8 and 9. So practically, this is what they want to see. Then, important is that you compare your solution with what exists in the market and you clearly demonstrate which are your advanced features, which are the things that make you different and significantly better. And we're looking, again, as Philip mentioned before, we're not looking for step changes, we're not looking for incremental changes, we're looking for disruptive changes, things that are changing the way we are doing business and things that can allow us to leave the old ways of doing business behind. You have to look again at the feasibility, and this is something that you're going to be interviewed about. And when we're talking about the feasibility of a project, we're talking about feasibility in terms of 3 dimensions. The technological feasibility, can we actually build what we're promising? The practical feasibility, can we actually deliver the project? Do we have barriers? Do we know how to overcome them? And the economic feasibility, can we actually make money out of it? And then it's very important to keep in mind something that we always repeat, but when we're preparing proposal, it's important that there is a central, let's say, a common understanding about what we're presenting. Because if it's very often that one person writes section 1, another person writes section 2, and another person writes section 3. This is not bad. Proposal writing in European projects is teamwork. However, just please make sure that those sections are coherent, that those people sit very often at the same table and they're making sure that the proposal is coherent and what is written in section 1 corresponds to what is written in the other sections. Some examples from my side, when we're, for example, how do we compare with existing alternatives? I always try to use the possibility of a table where we have the methodologies or the activities that we are proposing, and then we have to identify which are the decision-making factors for the buyers, which are those elements that the people who are going to buy our solution care about. And those features, those functionalities, or those product attributes, those should be compared from, we need to compare existing solution with our solution. And of course, we need to highlight in pure technical terms how our solution is significantly better and more innovative than the previous ones. When it comes to feasibility, my favorite way of explaining feasibility, and this is a book by Steve Blank, it's one of the many great books that exist in the topic. But generally speaking, when I'm talking about the feasibility, I have in mind the process of aligning the customer development process with the product development process. Meaning, how do I understand my customer? How do I turn this understanding into building a prototype? How do I test this prototype with real customers? And how do I incorporate this knowledge into building the next iteration? So the technological feasibility and the economic feasibility are those processes. My ability to run these iterations quickly, effectively, and learn the most out of each iteration is the practical feasibility. It's my ability to move closer to what exactly the customer needs. Then, again, it is very important to remember that we are looking for high-risk companies. Companies with lower level of risk could possibly find, and we will discuss it further in section 2, could possibly find their way through existing mechanisms, either through the typical VCs that exist in Europe, which are most oriented into platforms, or B2B platforms, or B2C platforms, etc., or sometimes even into banks. So here, EC Accelerator is looking for the really risky investors. In this part in section 1, we are describing the business risks. One clarification important for you is that in section 3, there is also a part about the risks, but there we're describing the project risks. So if a risk is related to the ability of the company to raise capital or to penetrate into markets, this is described in section 1. If the risk is related with the ability of the company to deliver the project on time or to reach certain milestones or to have an adequate resources for running the project, this is explained in section 3. In any case, when it comes to business risks, EAC projects must be risky. Having said that, and before going to impact, I think now is the time to try to answer to your questions. So, there is a question which I'm not sure. It's in Turkish. Maybe can you help us, Yasemin?
Yes, Serkan Kurt, you are talking about it, right?
Yes.
He's asking if you are going to explain how to upload the documents in the portal.
Could you do that?
Yeah, okay. These are the documents that you have to prepare, and then you have to turn them into PDF format. And when you are logged in the system, and when you find the cutoff application number on the web page, you just upload these documents and you submit your documents. You have to prepare them. For example, the Annex 4 is in Excel, but you turn it to PDF. The pitch deck is prepared in PPT and other documents. All the templates are on the web page of the EIC portal. So you prepare them, you turn them to PDF, and you upload them on the system. If you log into the system, it's quite self-explanatory, actually. I don't know if it is sufficient.
Yeah, but please ask your questions. I mean, this is the opportunity this morning. However basic or silly you think the question is, if you don't understand it, it's important. So please feel free to ask your questions. We have nearly 70 people online. I'm sure there must be at least 50 questions out there. So please send them in.
There is a very interesting question. If it is a must to indicate a pilot study in the target market, and if it's good to attach a letter of intent received from a use case provider, I would say it would be very, very useful, extremely useful. First of all, generally speaking, we are talking about validation and demonstration. Since we are moving in the neighborhood of TRL 6 to TRL 8, this is the time of the phase of the product development cycle that we are looking for validation and demonstration. Hence, pilot study or demonstration activities or validation campaigns through feedback. These are very important. And speaking about letters of intent, absolutely. Any type of letters of support that proves that the company has paying customers or customers who are willing to pay in the future or investors who are willing to invest or people who are willing to give you support as strategic partners, as value-added partners, either to sell your products in foreign markets or to be your partners as technology providers. All these letters of support certainly add value to your application and make your application more convincing for the evaluator. I mean, we can state in our proposal whatever we like. I can state that I have Bill Gates backing me up. Unless I can prove it with some papers, it's just a statement, just my opinion. Therefore, please, if you have people who can support you with letter of intent, invest some time, prepare some templates for them, and get to pass the floor to Yasemin.
Yes, they are asking for a slide or PDF which is explaining this application process. I think in one of our trainings, I have made a presentation explaining this process step by step. So it should be in our web page. We can write again the web page here. If you go to the previous training slides, you can find that presentation, and it's step by step explaining the whole process, how to register to the system, how to upload the documents to the system. Everything is explained in that presentation.
So we can probably find that presentation and circulate it. I'm asking Kamal now, we can probably do that. All I would say with that is things change sometimes. So you should also check with the current instructions on the EC website to make sure that you're complying with them.
There are a couple of comments, Philip and Grigoris. They are asking, they say that they prefer this training to be in Turkish, and some person has written that he's following this training through Google Translate. I would like to say that this is a program funded by the European Union, and your counterpart here is the European Union. All the documents are in English. If your project is awarded, you have to get in touch with your project officer, who is in Brussels, and you have to communicate with him in English. All the reports, everything is in English. So if you are not competent in communicating verbally and in written form in English, unfortunately, you will have big problems. That's why these trainings are held in English, because you have to be competent yourself in English if you are really interested in applying to this program. So we are sorry, but this is the case. This is not a Turkish program. This is an international program, and you have to follow all these processes in English. That's why we hold it in English.
Okay.
There is another question, I think, now for me, which is about the technical characteristics of the competition, and there is a lot of technical information. And should you normally, our colleague here states that normally they wouldn't prepare a table like that. Well, of course, it's a matter of choice. But if we want to demonstrate the benefits of our solution, we need to demonstrate some key technological characteristics. We need to demonstrate some key features that makes our product or our service better. The example I used was about some device. So by definition, if you're trying to compare different methods of devices achieving a goal, then you need to use a technical characteristic. Possibly your innovation has to do with some kind of service or some kind of other type of benefits for the customer. In any case, our strong suggestion is to compare yourself with the competition in a way that highlights your competitive advantages. If your competitive advantages are on the technical information, then you should highlight it. If your competitive advantages are on the quality of the services or of the innovative business model, again, you need to highlight it. But you need to find the things that make the customers make the buying decision. And in that case, you need to highlight them somehow and compare yourself with the competition. Next one, I think this one we have discussed it in the past, Yasemin, many times. Can branching activities in a target market be funded as a grant, or should it be as blended finance? We discussed it before. I think that we agree that opening a branch in a foreign market is more like a technology readiness level 9 activity. It means that your product is already mature and now you want to roll it out in the global market. It's a great thing. You should do it. It's expected from you. But this is more of an activity that goes towards the blended finance or towards some kind of other private investor that you might have on board. For example, there might be the need for you to start, you have finished your product, you have already your customers, but you decided, let's say, that the German market is the market for you. You don't necessarily need to go to the blended finance. You may state in your proposal that you have found an investor, your own investor, a private investor, and a letter of intent will greatly help there, that is willing to finance this expansion. So you mentioned that expansion. It's just that you are not asking money from the EC Accelerator. Then, what about the atomized budget? No, atomized budget doesn't go in Annex 4. It goes in Section 3. You have a table that you have to fill in Section 3, but also you have to fill in the budget in Part A of your proposal. So it's not in the annexes in the Excel spreadsheet, but you can find, you need to fill in the forms in Part A of the proposal where you put all the budget data, but also in the section 3 where there is a specific table for this job.
I should have said, by the way, all of these questions will be put onto our website with the responses, so they'll be there as a record, and all of the the presentation will also be there. It's a problem we all have, by the way, that we've just gone through the shopping list, and you can sit there and convince yourself that it's all been responded to. It's the easy way out. But I would suggest, if you have the time, that you have an independent person look through your proposal, question you on it, because there may be some things you've missed, there may be some contradictions, there may be an imbalance. Sometimes, if we're technical people, we put a lot of information in there about the technology and not much say about the markets, which we understand less. That doesn't show how clever we are technically, it shows how poor we are commercially. So the balance is very important to get that right. And also there's a tendency to cram the proposal with too many words, too many technical diagrams. Try and keep it fairly simple, straightforward. More than half of the evaluators will be business people, financial people, not technical people. So you're selling your business as well as selling the idea to those people.
We have another last question, which I think that again I would need the help of Yasemin. On the portal, the organization status appears declared. How can I activate the organization status? I'm not sure I understand the topic.
unless you are awarded, unless your project is successful and you are awarded the grant, it looks declared, because when you are when your proposal is successful, the European Commission is asking you to send your official documents. So after that, they approve your status. Until then, it is declared. So it's not an obstacle to your project application.
So
Okay, great.
we still, according to the screen, have 5 open questions. Are we all answered now?
I think yes.
Yep.
Possibly it's the time to move to the next section. And of course, it's okay. I think that both Philip and Yasemin would agree with me that it's okay to keep also the questions dynamic. I mean, it's okay to pop up a question, even if it's not in the particular section. We're here to answer. There is no walls between the sections. But let us move. Let me give you.
We're here to help our audience. They can ask whatever they like, whenever they like, whilst we're on air.
Exactly. Now let's go to impact. Philip, the floor is yours.
Sure. So the second key area, in looking at impact, the Commission seek to find out whether the project can demonstrate qualitative and qualitative impact. What does that mean? It means quality in the sense of improving research, improving IP, knowledge, and quantitative, of course, is will it create wealth, turnover, profit, jobs, and so forth. So there's a combination in those bullets of what they're looking for. Will it return well on the investment they're making? Is there a good return? Because after all, we're talking about improving the economy, improving the job prospects. And part of that, of course, is whether there's potential for the project to scale up into mass production, commercial success. So all of that is what they're looking for in there. There was a series of events last week sponsored by the Commission on Research and Innovation Days, and they had a panel, a dragon's den of people looking at bids. And the point that really struck me was how those people, the financial people, were looking at the business as the product, not the product within the business. Important difference. When we write the proposal, we write about how good our product is, how it will win in the market. But when it comes to financing, they're looking at the whole thing as a company. What's its value? What will that value increase by and when? And how will this product affect us? So important difference there. So that's what they're looking for. What's your experience, Yasemin?
Next. Yeah, next please, Grigoris.
Yes.
The impact session is actually mostly about markets. So our European Commission would like to see that you will be able to deliver your products, sell your product in the global markets, and you will create a global impact. That was impacted under this session. And Turkish market is actually a big market to test the product before the product goes to the global market. So it's quite big enough actually. And if you already have some potential customers in Turkey, and if you test your product in the Turkish market, actually it can be a good sign that it will be preferred in the global markets as well. So we are lucky in terms of our market size. But next please, Grigoris. What's missing with the Turkish applications is that you know, in order to convince the evaluator that your product have a global potential impact, you have to introduce your competitors or existing solutions very well. And unfortunately, when it comes to competitors, sometimes we see that the Turkish companies may not be knowledgeable enough about the international competitors, about international products, about the market situation in the global target market. So the Turkish companies may be a bit too much Turkish market oriented, and when it comes to global markets, they may not have sufficient knowledge about international customers needs, and international solutions. So we can say that there is some type of short-sightedness on international markets, and actually this is the point where they fail most of the time. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Yasemin. So Let us go again to look at the criteria one by one, and then I will highlight a couple of topics, and then of course we will give the floor to questions. First of all, we have to convince the reviewers, the evaluators, that we are addressing a big market. We're addressing a big market and we know the size of our market. Then we have to convince them that the substantial demand will exist and will be growing in the future. Nobody would like to invest in a market that is becoming smaller. So it's not only enough for the market to be big now, but normally we have to go through this cumulative average annual return so that we can prove that growth, so that you can prove that the market will continue to grow. Then we need to convince that we know both our customers and our competitors. And this is very important. And I'm going back to the last aspect. We need to do proper customer segmentation, but we also need to position our competitors in the competitive arena with respect to price, quality, availability, logistics, whatever are the things that matter for the customer. Then we need to explain the market conditions, the growth rate, how the competitive offerings are working, which are the opportunities, where the value is captured within our value chain, within our ecosystem. The most important thing that I will have a special mentioning is about the potential to scale up. This means that we need to demonstrate a convincing business plan that will not just keep our company stable or profitable, but it will give it the possibility to scale up. We will go to the definition of scaling up later. Also, we need to show that our proposal makes sense with the overall strategy. So if our company is working on medical technologies, it wouldn't make great sense to say that we're going to launch a product on agri-food. And vice versa. We need to explain how this proposal, asking to provide this project, will at the end result in a successful future for our company, for the strategy of the company as a whole. And then, of course, we need to convince them that we have a realistic and relevant strategic plan for commercialization. Also, we are supposed to aim at European and global markets. And many people are asking, is it okay if we stick only to the Turkish market? I'm afraid no. Turkish market is huge. It's very strong. It's a great, allow me the term, sandbox. It's a great opportunity to test the solutions. It has the critical mass to give you enough feedback on how your solution should look like. But then you need to demonstrate how you are aiming at European or global markets. Another question that we often get is it a problem if we are aiming markets outside Europe? I would say no, it's not a problem. It's actually a plus. European Commission wants to support companies that can have an export potential and that can launch products in many markets all around the globe. So if you have some particular competitive advantages, which are connected with your ability to reach markets that other companies might not be able to reach, you should highlight them. And of course, look at your IPs, that you have your patents, that you have the so-called freedom to operate, meaning that you are not stopped, there are no boundaries imposed to you by other IPs. That's also a very important aspect you need to take care of. And generally speaking, we like to see companies that have their patents in place, but we are also aware that there are some kind of solutions and some kind of products that are not patentable in Europe. In the United States, it's a different story because they tend to patent everything. But in Europe, whenever you are talking about software or whenever you are talking about processes or production methods, there might be the case that your process or your code is not patentable. That's still okay as long as you have the freedom to operate and as long as you have adequate measures in place to protect your commercial interests. Now, speaking about the market, which is very important for me, please make sure that you are introducing a growing market. And please make sure that you understand within the same market, you understand the different segments of the market, and you are picking the one which is growing faster. This is the whole idea, because within possibly the same market, different product types or different segments might be growing and other segments might be lowering. Therefore, you need to demonstrate that you are in the right market segment. The framework that I like to use is the so-called TAM sum sum, which starts with the total available market. This is whatever exists. This is the big number. Then the one that the serviceable addressable market is the one that could be serviced by your product. But the serviceable obtainable market is the one that you can realistically reach within the resources and within the size of your company in the course of the project. It's very, very important for you to address all three of those cases to demonstrate to the evaluators that you have done an in-depth analysis of your market. And I go to my favorite part, which is scalability. And to put it as a definition, scalability is the company's ability to maintain or improve profit margins while sales volume increases. When I was young and innocent, they were teaching us microeconomics in the university, and we have learned the law of marginal diminishing returns and these economies of scale. These things do not exist anymore with technology. There are drivers for scaling, particularly if you have a light asset base, if you have automated process, low-cost labor, replication potential. So in order to demonstrate your scalability, you need to highlight your business model, your team, that there is a substantial demand, that the market conditions are favorable, that your financial needs are well-defined, and you have realistic financial projections. So here you can see the difference between growing, which is great in plain business terms, but this is not what the EC Accelerator is looking for, and scaling. If I need to put it down in a very simple phrase, scalability is that you get more out that you put in as you grow. And before going to implementation, I think we need to open the floor for more questions.
Yeah. There are some questions regarding the portal. After you register your company on the portal, you have to do an SME self-assessment. This is mandatory. So just registering your company in the portal is not sufficient. If you are applying for SME Instrument or Accelerator program, you have to be an SME and you have to prove that you are an SME. So there's an SME self-assessment test, and I think Ayşenur Hanım's question is regarding that. You have to do this test, self-assessment test, and you have to see on the screen that you are validated as an SME. After that, you can apply for the Accelerator program. I hope this is sufficient. There's a question in Turkish, so I would like to answer this in Turkish. Türkiye pazarında belli ölçüde ürünümüzün ticarileşmesi projeye güçlendirici etki yaratacak. O halde doğru mu anladım? Aslında ürününüzün ticarileşmemiş olması gerekiyor. Çünkü ürününüz ticarileştiyse zaten programa başvurmak için çok ileri bir aşama oluyor. Yani TRL 9 oluyor. O yüzden ürünün ticarileşmemiş olması gerekiyor. Benim demek istediğim Türkiye pazarının büyük bir pazar olması demekle ürünün prototipini Türkiye pazarında test etmiş olmanız, yani büyük bir pazarda test etmiş olmanız, global pazarlara girerken ürüne talebin artabileceği ya da sizin test için yeterince büyük bir pazarı kullandığınız anlamına geliyor. Ama bu ticari bir ürün olmuş olması demek değil. Sadece ürününüzü yeterince global pazarlarla ilgili fikir verecek büyük bir pazarda test etmiş olmanız bir avantaj. Ama ürünün prototipini test etmiş olmanız avantaj. Ürünü eğer Türkiye'de ticarileştirdiyseniz ürün zaten ticari bir proje oluyor ve başvuru için uygun olmuyorsunuz. The question was about the Turkish market. One participant is asking if they have already commercialized their product in the Turkish market. Is it a good sign? If the product is already commercial, this is not eligible for application. The product has to be at working prototype level. But if you tested your working prototype in a big market, yes, it's an advantage, but you have to know your global target markets. You have to know the global customers as well, of course. The last question. Do the evaluators have access to the submitted projects before the due date? No, you can submit your project in the portal before the cutoff date. But the proposals are distributed to evaluators on the cutoff date. So if you submit your proposal to the portal before the cutoff, and then after that you would like to make some changes before the cutoff, you can recall your proposal. You can change it and you can resubmit it, and the evaluator will only see the latest proposal. They won't have access to the previously submitted ones. But of course, if you are going to do this, recall and resubmit, you have to do this before the 7th of October, before the cutoff. So if you submit the proposal on the 5th of October, and then you want to make some changes, you can recall and you can resubmit it before the 7th of October. But if you submit it on the 7th and you want to recall it on the 8th of October after the cutoff, it's not possible.
It's worth saying, isn't it, that the cutoff is down to 100th of a second. It is absolutely precise. So there's no, not quite made it. You either make it or you don't. They do that to be fair. And this time there will be many thousands more proposals because it's the final cutoff. So don't wait until the last minute and find the system is jammed and miss the deadline. You know, do try and be early if you can. I realize these things go right up to the minute, but try and be early because it's important this time more than any before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Now we're moving to implementation if we don't have any other questions. Again, Philip, floor is yours.
Okay, next. Implementation, I always think it's sort of need, idea, solution. It's a question of whether the solution you're offering will make it all happen. So the questions here are, does the project have a balanced team? What do we mean by that? If it's a team of scientists, they may well make the thing work, but they may never get it to market. They may have the wrong costing. They may know nothing about production. So you're looking for a balanced team, ideally finance, marketing, and production, as well as an overall manager that can drive them and make everything happen. So very important. Is this driven by a commercial and business strategy? So many businesses don't have a strategy. I always say you should have a 5-year rolling strategy. You sit down, you put down where you want to be in 5 years. Who can tell? But it's good to have some ideas. It may only be one sheet of paper. You may want to take over the world, or you may want to stay as a partnership. It's up to you, but those decisions are important. Then within that, you can do an annual business plan in more detail to help take you towards this 5-year goal, which you never achieve because each year you add another year on. So important to have that strategy. Part of that strategy should, of course, be the development of your project, your product, and how you see it getting to market, what you want to do with it. Now, so many companies say, oh, we'll go into manufacture, but they don't have the cash or the knowledge to do that. So would it be best to license it? Would it be best to go into partnership with a manufacturer who already has a customer base? Would it be best to sell the idea and stay as a research business? These are questions to ask as part of your strategy. The freedom to operate, how easy is it to transfer IP? Who's the main shareholder? How easy is it to buy into that company if you're a venture capitalist? Non-bankability again, why will people not lend you the money, the banks and so forth? Why is your project risky enough to put them off so that the commission can look to fund that risk? Do you have enough people? Do you have enough resources in terms of production to see the project through? Are you being realistic about the time it takes? We're told by the Commission often time frames are too short. People don't realize how long it takes to do these things. The same with finances. Often people don't ask for enough money to see the project through, which shows in both cases they don't really have the experience of running a project like this and seeing it through to the final stages. And again, as Grigori said, anything to do with proof of concept, testimonials, trial markets, anything like that endorses the fact you have a project or product that the market is interested in. So your experience, Yasmin?
Okay, next please, Grigoris. In terms of implementation, the most important criteria is the composition of the team, actually. This is where the evaluators pay the most attention. So the Turkish research companies have excellent teams in terms of engineers. There are really brilliant engineers. So there is a very good technology creation potential in the companies. And there are also a good support from the national government grant programs like Ministry of Industry and Technology and TÜBİTAK. So the research infrastructure and the research capability of the teams are quite good, actually. But next, please, Grigoris. But the teams are very technical oriented. Most of the technology companies are consisting of just engineers, just technical people, people who just develop the technology. But please keep in mind that it's an innovation project. So what's expected from you with this program is that you have to deliver the output of your project, which is your product, to the end users, to the end customers. You have to be able to sell your product in the global markets to global customers at the end of the project. That's what's expected from you. So in order to do that, you need non-technical people in your team as well, like business development people, people who have specific experience in the specific field you are operating in, sales and marketing people. So this is missing. If your team is consisting of just technical people, unfortunately, you may not get a high grade from the implementation section, because team composition is, I think, more important than everything in the evaluation of the whole proposal. So marketing and commercial skills are important. If you don't have those skills in your company, you have to integrate some people, involve some people who have those skills. You need people who will develop the strategy of the company, who are good in business. So team is really important, both in the evaluation of the implementation criteria and in the evaluation of your pitch proposal if you get to the second stage of the evaluation process. There are also some problems about the financial issues, because in the implementation, the evaluators also evaluate the financials, your budget and your financial expectations. And when the proposal is prepared by technical team who don't know the market, who don't know the financial issues, this finance part is also a bit weak in the proposals. So that's why the Turkish companies may fail in the implementation section. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yasemin. I would now go again to the topics that are the criteria, and let's give you a quick reminder of which are the criteria. Criteria number one, and possibly the most important if you ask me, and I would like actually to ask your opinion then, Philip and Yasemin. I think that the non-bankability is the most sensitive, the most difficult to understand, but the most important criterion that distinguishes a successful proposal. What do we mean by non-bankability? We mean the possibility that the problem that although a company has huge potential, that has lots of possibilities to conquer the global markets, there is not sufficient capital either in the private equity or in the banking or in the grant domain to support it. Then, as it was already highlighted by both Yasemin and Philip, the team is very important. And this is also something that they will examine in the interview if you manage to go there. Then other important topics is the availability of resources required. It's very important. Very often what happens is that people are either underestimating the needs for a project, and this is the common thing that happens, or sometimes they are overestimating. Sometimes they're asking of way too much money for something that needs less. The answer here is, don't try to be frugal. Don't try to achieve anything with very little money. Your ambition needs loads of cash, to be fair about that and to be clear about that. However, try to be realistic and try not to overprice particular items. Try to ask for lots of money to do lots of things. Don't ask for lots of money to do little things. Then, your time frame needs to be realistic, and you need to have some good housekeeping when it comes to work packages, deliverables, milestones, etc. Please remember that in EC Accelerator, each work package doesn't need to have too many deliverables. 1 or 2, sometimes maximum 3 might be more than sufficient. And let me now go to non-bankability. As we discussed, the level of risk is high, but also is the potential. And then this project can be deemed as non-bankable, and then it can be supported by the EIC fund. What we want to do is to use the EIC pilot money in order to decrease the level of risks so that private investors, VCs, business angels, private equity funds, corporate investment vehicles are also comfortable to co-invest because the risk is decreased thanks to the support of the European Commission. But let us see, are all non-bankable projects good enough? For example, if my project lacks attractiveness from a business perspective, it's a great idea, it will solve people's problems in life, but it will not make money. Then this project is non-bankable, but is not the project that EC Accelerator would support. Also, let's consider a scenario that my project has in the shareholders table, has in the ownership structure, many people who are not actively contributing into the project. Is this project non-bankable? Yes. Is this project EIC material? No. Again, the projects that the EIC wants to finance are those that, due to the systematic risk capital market gap, those that because they are falling in between the preferences of VCs and banks and they cannot get funding elsewhere, those are the projects that EC Accelerator wants to finance. And let's see a little bit why the other types of financial tools for financing innovative projects fail in the case. First of all, since we're talking about deep tech projects, and that's something that you need to remember, the VCs might not be able to even understand the project. The VCs, if you look at the European scene, the VCs in many of the cases, they used to finance apps for delivering food. They used to finance very straightforward electric scooters or bikes, etc. They possibly do not have the knowledge required to evaluate deep tech investments. As for banks, I think it's clear. Banks, as my father used to say, banks are only financing the people who don't actually need money. The banks are asking for collaterals. The banks are asking for assets so that they can get from you in case you fail to return the payments. So technically speaking, very few startups in this world can expect to get financed in their first steps by banks. The banks, in the best case scenario, they will give you some small working capital if you are lucky to convince them. And then what about the grant schemes? Grant schemes normally are smaller in size. Grant schemes, at least in many countries, international countries, are quite complex in the procedure, so it takes lots of time for the grant scheme to arrive. And also the grant schemes are not so much market oriented in national calls as they are here in EC Accelerator. That's why we're trying to find exactly the sweet spot with respect to those activities. And EC Accelerator needs to jump in the places where other financial instruments are failing. EC Accelerator is not competing with VCs. EC Accelerator is not competing with banks. Certainly, it's not competing with national grant schemes. It is trying to fill in the gaps and to highlight those companies and those activities that the other existing and available financial tools are not able to deliver. So, what you need to do is try to use relevant facts from Turkey. It would be amazing, first of all, if you manage to have already some investors that are willing to co-invest and give you a letter of support. Even if you don't have that case, Philip, can you help us? What is a good strategy to demonstrate the interest of investors, even in cases where you don't have that possibility?
Well, it's a matter of gathering their opinions. I mean, the ideal, first of all, the larger and more important the company, and the more important the person who actually signs the letter of endorsement, the better. Ideally, they should be well-known businesses, of course, but the number one is if they will say this, we see the potential of this, it's a wonderful product, we will definitely buy, as it will save us X% a year or something like that. Now, those letters are few and far between. The next stage down would be, this is a very promising product, and we think it's worthy of investment and it has potential for the market. And probably the lowest level is this company is well known. They've undertaken some good research in the past. We would be quite convinced that this product will get to market and be good once investment has been made. So a combination of those would be good. But it's all about convincing. You're selling the idea to the evaluators. Remember, they have a limited time to look at this, and if they find people endorsing, they may decide the same way. If there's no endorsement, then those people who have endorsements are likely to score that little bit more than you are. On the non-bankability, whilst I have the microphone, remember it's competitive. So whilst the VCs may not have technical background, of course, they have access to people who have, but the initial look would be theirs. You're competing with those people who are doing food apps and other easy to understand short-term investments. Remember, the VCs are looking at jumping in, investing, and then jumping out as soon as they can. They don't see their future as spending 10 years working with you. They want their money back. And the point that was made the other day, they're also asset averse. If they have an investment, which is the software investment, they will prefer that over something that requires investment in a large piece of laboratory or production equipment or a new building. So they're asset averse because, of course, that's more investment in the way of them making a return. So important to look at it from their perspective and see what you think of your project from someone who's buying into the idea and buying into the background and finance of the company. Back to you, Grigoris.
Thank you very much, Philip. And I would like to ask Yasemin a little bit. Yasemin, from your experience, the Turkish companies that succeeded in previous rounds of EC Accelerator of SME Instrument, did they already have the investors on board, or did they provide some good evidence that they will bring investors on board? What's going on there?
Actually, it depends because before October, before the accelerator in the SME Instrument program, there was such criteria of non-bankability. So the evaluation actually has changed with the accelerator. And we have to keep it in mind when we look at the successful companies, because there is some different process in the evaluation after the accelerator. The previous ones who got the funding, yes, some of them have had already received VC funding, but the ones who got this accelerator support, they didn't have any VC funders. But they were already in touch with some VCs, and they had some letter of intent stating that if they get the EC funding, they would find the co-funding or the further funding from these VCs. If you are really if you really have the potential to attract funding, it may be negative, because I know a company who was quite promising and who was in touch with many European and international VCs, and they were ready to invest in the company. And this company got a very low score from the non-bankability criteria, and they failed just because of this criteria. So you have to clearly state that you are in touch with VCs, and if you get the EC grant, these VCs are willing to co-fund or further fund the project. with the condition that the EC will fund you.
Thank you very much, Yasemin. One last comment from myself with respect to this slide. The proposal template clearly asks you what would be the impact if you don't receive financial support. And one aspect here, one obvious answer to this point is to say that our growth will be slower. We will still be growing, but we will not be able to conquer global markets as fast as possible. Another possible answer is that we would look for financing and possibly relocation in the other side of Atlantic, because this is the so-called fear of missing out. This is what the European Commission wants to avoid with EC Accelerator. EC Accelerator was politically put forward from European Commission exactly to avoid that good companies will need to go to Silicon Valley or to New York or to, I don't know, possibly other places, even Dubai, to raise capital while they could be raising capital here in their own countries. This is the thing that you possibly need to highlight as well. Speaking about the team, it's very important to look at all the aspects of the team. We like to say that investors and possibly EC Accelerator likes to bet more on the jockey than the horse. So sometimes it's not only about having a great idea, but you need to be able to convince them that you have the right people to execute this idea. And you need to explain what these people have achieved in the past and how this is connected with their current achievements. It's possibly a good idea to explain what is the shareholding structure. Remember that sometimes the shareholding structure, which is wrong, might actually kill the proposal. And how you're going to acquire the missing competencies and how you're going to incentivize your team members to go the extra mile, how you're going to incentivize your team members to do some extraordinary achievements in order to manage to scale up in global market. So technically speaking, this is the table that you need to fill in. I always say, when it comes to the C-suite, when it comes to the senior people of the company, the commitment needs to be 100%. If you're saying that give me a couple of millions of euros, but I'm not ready to quit my other job in the university, and I will have only 30% commitment in the company. So you are asking for the European taxpayers to give you the money, but at the same time, you're not ready to risk your own safe job. This is not something that reviewers would see in a positive way. And now I think it's time to open for the questions. So please feel free to ask any questions with respect to implementation, particularly when it comes to non-backability, to the team, to the features of the team, etc. These are the important aspects that you need to deal with now, or even the budget, or whatever other question you might have before we go to the annexes.
I think whilst we're waiting, Grigoris, if you go back to your previous slide, this
this one.
The one at the bottom there, these made-up job titles that happen. It doesn't impress anybody. Data wranglers and growth hackers and all the rest. Keep it simple. Chief Executive, Chief Technical Officer, Chief Operating Officer, and so on, that they're internationally understood. Worth remembering too that the evaluators are not native English speakers in the main, and I guess there are even fewer of them in future. So keeping the English simple and understandable helps with your proposal. So, you know, take that on board, but it's, I think, a sort of almost a disease that spread from America to give these titles. I'm a chartered engineer myself, and when we have a problem with the washing machine or something and I telephone and say, you know, it needs fixing, we'll send an engineer. And I always correct that to technician, you know. It's a thing of mine, you know. Engineers are not recognized generally internationally, so it's an issue. But keep it simple is my line. And one we haven't mentioned yet all the way through, the wow factor of the project. If it has a wow factor, the evaluators can take on board. For instance, last week, there were two examples in a presentation. One was a very complicated nanotechnology production system, which was operating and working, and they wanted to expand. and the technical guy doing the interview with Dragons couldn't get over why they needed the money, what the company was worth, what it would be worth in 5 years, because technically he was impressed with his own product. The other one was a medical material that strengthened the surface of bone and removed the need for knee and hip implants. And the venture capitalists were immediately onto that one as a wow factor project, even though it was just as technical as the first. So it's how it's put over. Similarly with ownership, the first company had venture capitalists on board with very complex shareholding, and the people seeking the money had less than 20% of the company, so that put them off. Whereas the medical one was family owned, with the chairman owning 51%, so very simple. And again, you know, they evaluated the Dragons, the venture capitalists took that on board as being an excellent investment. The first one, even though the potential financially was much greater, they weren't very impressed with. Sorry, back to the subject.
Thank you very much, Philip. Let me see if we have, yes, we have one question. So let me check. It's in Turkish. Before, how, okay.
Goris, can I answer this?
Yes, yes.
Merhaba tekrar. Sevinç Hanım'ın sorusuna, daha doğrusu yorumuna cevap verme ihtiyacı duydum. Sanayi ve Teknoloji Bakanlığı'yla, bakanlığımızla birlikte zaten yakın işbirliği halinde çalışıp pek çok Türkçe dilinde de bilgilendirici seminerler yapmaktayız. Online olarak da geçtiğimiz Temmuz ayından itibaren oldukça fazla hem hızlandırıcı alanında hem de Ufuk 2020'nin diğer alanlarında Türkçe olarak bilgilendirici seminerler yaptık. Web sitemizde zaten bunun bilgileri de mevcuttur. Peki bu etkinlikleri neden İngilizce yapıyoruz? Birincisi bu TÜBİTAK'ın bir İPA projesi. İPA projesi kapsamında Ufuk 2020'de Ufuk 2020'de Türkiye adına bir İPA projemiz var. Bu kapsamda yabancı ve çok değerli uzmanlarımızla birlikte onların rol aldığı şekilde, görevlendirildiği şekilde bu etkinliklerimizi yapıyoruz. Onlar bizim için çok değerli çünkü hem değerlendirici olarak yıllardır bu sürecin içerisinde yer almışlar, hem de projeleri yazma aşamasında yıllardır bir deneyimleri sahip. Yani bu bir İPA projesi olduğu için zaten bütün süreçler İngilizce ilerliyor. Ve Ufuk 2020'de zaten hali hazırda genel olarak İngilizce dokümanlar hazırlanıp İngilizce dilinde başvurulduğu için bu etkinliklerin de İngilizce olması bir nebze başvurucu için yönlendirici olabiliyor. Çünkü bazı kavramları özellikle Türkçe'ye çevirmek bazı kavramların Türkçe'de anlamının yitirilmesine yol açabiliyor. Mesela blended finance aslında Türkçe olarak karşılığı karma finansman demek değil. Tam olarak karşılamıyor gibi hızlandırıcı programı özelinde bahsedersem. Zaten hep de uzman arkadaşlarımın bahsettiği gibi ilk aşamayı geçip mülakat aşamasına geldiğinizde bir takım olarak 3 kişiyle birlikte mülakatta yabancı uzmanlara kendi projenizi sunmanız bekleniyor İngilizce dilinde. Bu yüzden de aslında bu etkinliklerin İngilizce olmasının bir yararı da budur. Türkçe olarak bilgilendirici sunumlarımızda hep yapıyoruz. Teşekkür ederim. Thank you.
What was that about roughly, Merve?
Pardon?
What was the subject roughly?
It's again the language of the webinar, Philip. Some people,
right.
yeah, they say that it should be in Turkish.
Oh, right, okay.
But Merve Hanım explained it in detail.
There's a question there that I can answer. How much do you think these webinars have achieved their true purpose? After each event, we circulate an evaluation questionnaire, so you will receive one. In terms of the webinars, they're always graded from very poor, poor, satisfactory, good, and very good. We're around the upper 90% are satisfactory, good, and very good, and around 85% are good, or very good. So on paper, and the immediate response is that they are serving their purpose. Of course, it's down to you to amend your proposals and make your bids more effective from all of the events we run. That's the idea, and hopefully it has helped people to do that. Back to you, Grigoris.
Thank you very much. I think there is a request from our colleague to translate the proposal to Philip. There is something proposed, and there is a request to translate the proposal. Is it possible, or do you want us to move further? It's up to you.
Actually, Merve Hanım explained that the proposal was to organize these webinars in Turkish language. Her proposal, yes.
Okay.
Right.
But TÜBİTAK is already doing this type of event in Turkish, as Merve Hanım explained. So they can follow the Turkish ones. And unfortunately, as she mentioned, the second stage of the evaluation process is that you have to pitch your project to 6 different judges from 6 different European countries in English. And if you are not 100% competent in English, you have no chance of winning this. This is the fact. So if you don't believe that you can manage the English, unfortunately, you have to deal with the national funds. But this is a global program, and all other countries, the participants are really competent in English. So unfortunately, this is the case with this program.
Again, it's not any sort of bias against other languages. If you're going to pitch for finance internationally, and you're going to, more importantly, you're going to market in other markets, sell your products in other markets, generally the only common language is English. So this is why the whole thing is done that way. Otherwise, the Commission would be translating thousands of proposals. We heard, by the way, that on the blended finance alone, they've already agreed 140 projects, but there are 7,000 in the pipeline. This is just for blended finance. So if the Commission had to translate that into, I think it's now 8 official languages, it would be an impossible task. So it's unfortunate, but it's there that English is the common language used, as it is in many countries when it comes to marketing. Not as bad as it seems, because I think most technical people have had some training in English, English language driven topics.
Plus, if I'm allowed to make one small comment, in order to succeed in European projects, you don't need to speak English like Philip. It's okay even if you speak English like me.
Just a comment there. I'm often criticized that my English is difficult to understand because it's not American English. So I should say howdy y'all, and I'd be better understood than in so-called BBC English. So apologies if my accent is difficult to follow, but it is the genuine article.
Now, let's go to the other topic, which is the annexes. And Philip, let us start with you, and then we will follow the same.
Okay, next slide then, please. Yeah, just a reminder of what they're looking for here. A lot of documentation. This has been developed over many years, of course, so it's in response to lots of different needs. Document 1 we have covered as the main areas, and then we're into all sorts of easy and difficult annexes. It looks a lot, but they're very simple answers on ethics and securities and so forth. CVs, rather than just print off the CVs that have been sitting on file perhaps for years, try and tune them in to the project that you're dealing with. Don't overdo the academic stuff, but emphasize more the commercial stuff. Remember, it's about a commercial focus. Important to mention, of course, technical background, but I've seen proposals with perhaps 10 technical CVs. And then, as I said earlier, all that does is show the weakness in other areas when perhaps there's one, and it's something like Chief Operating Officer and Market Strategist. It shows there isn't enough importance attached to it. Next slide. I'm not being impolite, by the way. It's just quicker to say next rather than to thank every time. So Annex 4, the financial and corporate information. This is quite a challenge for a lot of companies. We had a webinar specifically on this topic on the 1st of September, which went into this in great depth. And that's available on our website. So please have a look on there. And then document 4 is the pitch deck, which we'll talk about in a second. Back to you. Yasmin, do you have any comments on the annexes?
No, actually, in our last webinar, there was a specific session on how to fill this Annex 4, the Excel folder, because we get a lot of questions from the companies how to fulfill that. The Annex 4 is asking financial information about your past 3 years financial data and your future forecasts about your company turnover and your profitability. So the common question we get is the N. You know, in the Annex 4, they are asking for the year N. This is 2020, the current year. So we start with 2020 and we go to the past 3 years. You should get the help of your accountant to fulfill the past data. For example, you should use your balance sheet and income table to fulfill the past 3 years. And regarding the future 5 years, you have to make some assumptions about your product, you know, about the sales, about the profitability, about the cost, and you have to explain the assumptions behind this in your proposal document. So the past years are the actual numbers taken from your official balance sheet and income table, but the following 5 years is about what you are expecting to get out of this project in the 5-6 years ahead.
Just before we move on to pitch deck, Grigoris, can we just go back to the annexes and ask you if you have any comments about them? Just go back one more slide, if you would. Anything from your experience on those? I'm thinking more about the document 2 onwards.
Yes, exactly. I think that the main thing that I would like to emphasize here is related to the letters of support and the letters of commitment. Actually, it's repeating what I said earlier, but it never hurts to repeat something which is so important. Whatever you claim in your proposal, it's just a claim. It becomes much more strong statement if you can support it with some documents signed by other people. It's never too late to pick up a phone and ask for a letter of support. A few things about letters of support. First of all, it's important to aim as high as in the hierarchy as possible. It's not possibly a good idea to ask for letters of support from some assistant project manager or some junior salesperson. Normally, you would ask for letters of support from the legal signatory of the company, from the CEO, from the director. If it's a multinational company, obviously that might not be easy. You cannot get a signature from Bill Gates, but you still can get a signature from the headquarters of your country, of Microsoft, for example, if you are a Microsoft value-added partner. Then we go to the content. It's a bad practice to have one standard template and to circulate it to different 10 people. Then the letter loses its value. It becomes a photocopy. So I would strongly encourage you to invest a little bit of time to customize each single letter of support, to make each single letter of support relevant to the case of the company that is giving it to you, your case, and to add something which proves that the letter of support is real and it reflects a real relationship between you and the company. Of course, scanned copies are fine, so you don't need to actually wait for the originals or anything like that. And I think that's my comments with respect to the letters of support. Strongly encouraging you also, if it exists, feel free to add some technical documents in Annex 3. Meaning, if you have some technical blueprint of your product that shows all the technical details, and you feel confident to share it with evaluators, remember, evaluators have signed a non-disclosure agreement, so your information is safe with them and your trade secrets are safe with them. that would also increase your credibility. That would also prove that your product is at the technology readiness levels they are looking for, that it has mature technologies in place. Also, if you have any other documents to add, something like prizes or recognitions, or even the press talking about you, if you have some articles that the press is talking about you, also feel free to add them in other supporting documents. They create a very good impression that your company is strong and it has lots of recognition in the market. And that's all from my side with respect to annexes.
Just on the CVs, the mistake that I've seen many thousands of CVs, the mistake that's often made is, first of all, just cramming it full of information. A nice sort of simple layout is good, but the thing that people are selling in themselves are their skills, and yet so often skills are not mentioned in the CV. It's usually about academic achievement and then track record, leaving the reader to assume that with that track record, they have certain skills. Now, that's not always the case. So it's good to put down the skills as well as qualifications and track record. And then the other obvious thing, of course, is to do the track record in reverse, starting with the most recent job rather than starting with school, because obviously it's the right way to do it. But so many people put it the other way around and just add things to the list. So it's tedious to write a CV, and it's even more tedious to write a good CV, but it is important, especially if your company is heavily loaded towards the technical and a bit thin on the ground with marketing, commercial, finance, and so on. Okay, the next slide, Grigoris. No, go back again to there. Any comments on Annex 4? I think you said it all in your presentations, didn't you, on the 1st of September? So please have a look at those. All I would say is if you're working from Turkish lira back to euros, make sure that the numbers are right. You have the conversion and it all adds up. And we'll move on to pitch deck. But any comments on Annex 4, Gregorius or Yasmin?
No, I would just like to remind that if the participants would like us to answer their questions in Turkish, please ask your questions in Turkish and write that Turkish explanation would be better. So we can also respond in Turkish, no problem.
Yeah, sure, of course, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no comment, Gregorius?
My comment with respect to the financials is engage your accountant. Engage your accountant early on and try to not only to ask them to fill in the form, but also try to work with them to understand yourself what those figures mean and how you can make the estimations that really reflect your business potential and your ambition. And also that financial projections need to be ambitious, but realistic at the same time.
Okay, so pitch deck. So next, please. So in terms of the pitch deck, they're looking here for a high-level overview of your project. And of course, it leads them into then, if you're lucky enough to go along to pitch your project, not lucky enough, successful enough.
Good enough.
It's not all about luck, it's about a well-prepared proposal done properly. So there is always an element of luck. But a high-level overview that will then lead into questions. It is presented in English and it has to be included with your proposal. So please don't leave it till the 6th of October to write out a quick pitch deck. Give it some thought. Present it to people, get them to ask questions, go through and correct it. Keep it straightforward, simple. Once it's in the proposal, you can't change it. So if you're invited to present it, there's no change. That's the one you present. That's the one that the evaluators have seen. So it can't be changed later. It's used, of course, at your interview. 10 slides, omitting the title slide and so on. 10 slides against set headings. Maximum of 10-minute presentation and a 30-minute interview. You will get longer if you've been seeking blended finance. So that's what they're after. Over to you, Grigoris.
Thank you very much. So let's go very quickly to see what the pitch deck requires. 10 simple slides. It's very much relevant to what we have seen in the past in all the pitches that we prepare for investors. So what is the company purpose? What is the problem and the solution? What is the value proposition? Market opportunity and risks, competition, business model, commercialization and strategy, and marketing strategy, financial projections, the team, and the conclusion, which needs to lead to something like, give us the money so that we can grow globally. All in all, I would say that this is a very good template. To be honest, very often I'm proposing, whenever people are asking me how to make a good pitch deck for VCs, I'm proposing them to use this template because it's very well designed. Just take into account the timing. It's very important to give sufficient time to the pitch as much as you give into your proposal, because if you leave the pitch for the very last day and you make a perfect proposal and you put all your emphasis into that, let's suppose that you are good enough to be selected to go in the second round, your pitch cannot be changed. This means that you will go into the interview with a not so great pitch, and that might really kill you. Therefore, strongly encouraging, if you're really aiming to get the funding, you really need to invest some time and possibly, if needed, a service designer or get support from some person who is skillful in PowerPoint presentations and make a simple, professional, to-the-point pitch. Some recommendations, of course, remember the award criteria. Again, while writing the proposal, plan enough time, be precise and to the point, calculate the time, measure yourself that you need 10 minutes to present everything. Avoid the technical language. Don't assume that everybody in the jury will be a technical expert in your specific domain. Too much text is very rarely welcome. Here, for example, I consider this as a slide with too much text. I would encourage you in your pitch to use infographics, to use numbers, to use pictures and visuals. And also, don't ignore the technical requirements. It cannot exceed 10 megabytes, and it has to be a separate PDF file. Some tips and tricks from IASME. You need to explain what are you selling, what are your customers, and why they should be paying for it. If you already have some early adopters, if you have demonstrated the solution and tested the value of your solution by selling it to someone as an early adopter, please mention it. Try to engage the audience. Storytelling is always welcome. Prepare yourself for the questions. Possibly invite some of the people who are not involved in proposal writing to ask you questions and ask them to be free to ask you the difficult ones. And try to be clear, positive, and credible. And I think this is what summarizes the ideas. But let's see now. Do you have some comments with respect to the pitch, Philip or Yasemin, before we go to the participants?
Yeah,
I think it's good to hear from Yasmin on her experience. Sorry, yeah.
Thank you. No problem. I think the biggest mistake in preparing the pitch deck is trying to put as much information as possible on the slides. But please remember that those people whom you are pitching are VC managers, and they are mostly interested instead of technical side, of course, they are more interested in the business side, like a VC. You know, the biggest issue a VC is interested is your exit strategy or your financials, your turnover. So you should focus more on those issues. Also, after your pitch deck of 10 minutes, there is a 20 minutes Q&A session with those judges. So you don't need to tell everything during those 10 minutes because they will be asking you many questions within those 20 minutes regarding your project, regarding your market, regarding your team. So just try to keep it as simple and as understandable as possible and be prepared for the questions. The questions are really tough. because those companies who make it to the second stage, to the pitch stage, they are all the best companies that you can find in Europe. So you have to be really well prepared. I recommend that you should make some exercises in front of real VCs in Turkey, if possible, before you go to the Brussels and you do your pitch deck, because practice is important. And I think that's all.
Just to add to that, again, having seen many proposals, don't begin with an apology. Some people say, well, I'm a technical person, really. I'm not really used to presenting. There's a psychological thing about wanting the people in the audience to befriend you, a bit like a lost pet or something. You know, you want them to be your friends. So beginning with an apology is not good. Being confident, and by being confident, it means practicing, being sure of your facts, coming over as confident. Dressing reasonably well, not in a a very formal way, but looking smart, looking well groomed. Obviously, people assess a character. I think it's within the first 10 seconds or something. So as many points as you can score are good. People are always nervous when they do presentations. If you're not nervous, you come over as too laid back. So, you know, if you feel nervous, that's good, not to the point of seizing up or something. And be prepared for the interplay between the team. I mean, we as a team are talking in separate countries, but, you know, we know each other, we refer to each other, there are no surprises. So working as a team is a good thing, and that's what the evaluators are testing. The wow factor is good. Pictures speak for 1,000 words, as we know, but watch the size of the files, of course. And people don't read the screen. So get your main points over in what you're saying. They're not reading what's on the screen. Very few people do. They will have read it beforehand, but you know, you to get your main points over in the spoken word, they should be looking at you, not the screen. And then some very obvious things like don't stand in front of these days, you know, it's projected from a computer, but don't get in the way of the screen wherever it is so that people can read it. Try not to dance about too much, and be sure of the sequence and so forth. So some general presentation stuff. There's reams and reams of information on the internet about making a good presentation. And really, to get this far and fail at the interview is appalling. It shouldn't happen. By then, it should be a matter of cementing the fact that you're worth funding. So some companies, I understand from Turkey, have fallen at this stage because they've been a too technical team and various other things. But you know, it's definitely in your power to get that thing through at the end. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Philip.
A few questions coming in, I think.
Yes.
Again, please ask your questions. Please ask questions. English, Turkish, whatever.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
There is a question about the limit of the pitch deck. There is no limit in terms of pages. There are just 10 slides that you have to respond to. But the minute you are limited to is 10 minutes. So if it is more than 10 pages or maybe 12 pages, you won't have sufficient time to present it. And too much slides and too much presentation also may not be preferred by the judges. So maybe 10 page plus cover I would recommend, or 12 maximum max 13 pages, but not more than. Sometimes I see pitch decks of the companies and there are 30 slides or something. I wouldn't recommend that. Just to add to that, Yasmin, too, timing is so important. So many companies dwell too long on the presenter and the background to the company, and then there isn't enough time to get the main message over, which is about the project and what you're looking for. So timing important. I've always worked on 1 minute per slide, so 10 is a good thing to have, and that's including any titles and things. So don't dwell too long on the things that don't really matter. There is another question regarding the maximum 30 pages limit. The main document limit is 30 pages, yes, and annexes are not included in this. In these 30 pages, excellence, impact, and implementation topics are included. But the document where you introduce your company and your detailed team and the Excel file and the PDF, they are all annexes and they are not included in the 30-page limit. Another question is regarding this Excel file, Annex 4. One participant is asking how big a deal would it be if there's a mistake filling out the financial form. I think this Excel is more important if you are applying for blended finance, because if you apply for blended finance, you will need to go through a due diligence, which means that there will be a detailed analysis of your company, including your financials. And if they see that there is misinformation in your folders, it may be a big deal, depending on how big the mistake is. But regarding your assumptions about the coming years, about your future revenue, future profitability, etc., it's already an assumption. So as long as the evaluator is convinced about these future assumptions, there's no problem.
We haven't really mentioned blended finance. When you apply, there's a tick box to say whether you're interested. This is a new financial instrument. If you take the grant the Commission can make at the lower TRL levels, as you go from 6 up to 9, then blended finance is an option. So the Commission, as I said earlier, are looking to fund the risk element, but then blended finance can be offered to see it through to commercial success. What is that blend? It's a blend of grant at the lower TRLs, and then it moves to a blend of VC funding and private funding, and then eventually at level 9, it's about private sector funding alone. So it's a blend of finance at each TRL level, and it's therefore important to be accurate about the TRL level you're saying you are at. And if you tick the blended finance box, it gives you an extra option. But remember, if you do that, as Yasmin's just said, you're subject to due diligence. It takes longer, and it means that other people have an influence in your business, perhaps even a shareholding. On the positive side, it means you get the money. It means that you're open to more funding, and it means that you're faster to market and perhaps better managed with the involvement of the venture capitalists. So it's a decision to make, but it has to be made at the submission of the proposal. You can't make that change later.
There is a comment by Sevinç Hanım. I think there is a misunderstanding about our role. She is recommending that the experienced SMEs should be matched with the startups, I think, in this program. But we are not representing the European Union or any institution regarding the European Union. We are private consultants. So this type of, we are not in the position to make this type of recommendations to the European Commission, unfortunately. We are just here to inform you about what's expected from the program. So maybe Sevinç Hanım can share these comments with TÜBİTAK if they can forward this to the European Commission, but these recommendations are not within our scope, sorry.
Something for Merve to take on board, I think.
Maybe, I don't know.
The question there about the evaluators having access to the pitch deck, as it's part of the proposal, yes, it's gone in with your proposal, and they would look at that to see, what it said. It's part of your proposal, and then the judges also see the full presentation. Any more questions? I'm surprised that we have so few questions. Actually, the whole idea was to try and help you with your submission. If you're not submitting on the 7th, it doesn't matter. You'll be submitting at some point. So please ask away if there's anything you don't understand.
One of the participants is asking for a sample pitch deck. Actually, if you Google a VC pitch deck, you will find thousands of examples. This pitch deck that the European Commission is expecting is not different from a regular pitch deck you have to make to a VC. It's almost the same. So you just need to Google pitch deck and you will find thousands, 10,000s of them.
And the EASME, the European Organization for SMEs, actually also have a website which shows it.
The headings of the pitch deck, the 10 slides, are explained in detail by the European Commission. All you need to be careful is don't put too much information on the slides, because sometimes we see that people are preparing the proposal and then they copy paste the paragraph. They copy it from the proposal and they paste it to the slide. This is not a good pitch deck example, you know. It has to be very short. It has to be a summary. There shouldn't be many lines. There should be more pictures, maybe graphs, tables, summary tables. So when a participant looks at your slide, they wouldn't need to read the lines. They'll just need to see the picture or the graph or the table, and they need to get the point in a minute.
Again, this shouldn't be news to anybody participating. You must all by now have made presentations either in the academic world or the business world. And again, the Commission are looking for a precise presentation of you and your business, the idea and why you want the money. I mean, it's it's a simple proposition from them.
One more question. Can you opt out of blended finals later after your project is funded? So when you make your submission, your proposal submission, you either choose blended finals or not. If you choose blended finance during your application, and if your project is successful, you have to go through a due diligence process. If you chose the blended finance option, you have to go through the due diligence. But at the end of the due diligence, of course, there's a negotiation process with the European Commission. If you don't get the deal with if you believe that you will get a better offer from outside VCs instead of the European Commission in terms of this funding, of course, you may choose to go with the external VC or with another financial instruments. But if you just pick the blended finance option during the submission and your project is awarded and you prefer not to go through the due diligence, it's not possible.
Okay, any more questions?
Dediğim gibi Türkçe'de sorabilirsiniz eğer daha rahat hissedecekseniz, daha rahat ifade edebileceğinizi düşünüyorsanız. Cevapları da tekrar Türkçe verebilirim eğer uzmanların anlattıklarından ve anlaşılmayan bir şey varsa. Merve Hanım da ben de Türkçe yardımcı olabiliriz tekrar sorularla ilgili.
Okay, any more questions? The webinar will remain open for the next half hour, so if you have any more questions to feed in, we'll answer them not on air, but can you say any more that we need to respond to on there, Yasmin or Merve? Or?
I think
Can I add something? As SME,
Yeah.
If I am SME for the applying this accelerator, I have nobody in my marketing team, business team, and there is someone as advisor. It is okay if I take advisor for marketing or my academic study.
To be honest, I would not consider it as a strong point. I mean, you can do it, and of course, you can mention in your proposal that you would be willing and able to continue with hiring a marketing expert once your project is funded. But honestly speaking, I would expect to see a full team. If an evaluator has to compare between your company that is lacking marketing skills and another one that it has marketing skills on board, you understand that most likely they would go for the one who already has the marketing skills.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions on there? I don't think so. So closing comments. Merve, anything to say?
Oh, thank you. It's a very valuable events, I think, for SMEs, for the thinking to apply for. Thank you for everything. Thank you for a great contribution and explanation. I hope all SMEs think it's beneficial events. Thank you.
Okay. Right, Grigoris, any final comments?
Well, I will finish with my favorite motto in life, which is the ultimate inspiration is the deadline. There is a little time for you now to focus. I would suggest that you have all the, we have in our website all the aspects that can be useful for you, financial, Q&A, how to make a business plan and everything. Go through them, focus, feel like an athlete before the championship and focus all your effort in preparing a successful proposal. Turkey has very good results so far in SME Instrument and EC Accelerator, and we'll make them even better. So we're counting on you to make us proud.
Yeah. From my point of view, I would suggest rereading the proposal. Don't ignore the faults that are there. Get a second pair of eyes to read it and ask some awkward questions. Cross-check with the annexes and the statements to make sure it's consistent. No excuse for the finances being wrong, they need checking. And use the website, and on the website there is also a guide to how to write a proposal, both in English and in Turkish, and I think is one of the very few full guides. It's about 25 pages. It's sitting there. Please use it. That's all from me, other than to thank everyone for listening. This presentation and the questions and answers will be on the website within the next few days. Good luck with your proposals. We expect some firm winners. It's now over to you. So back to Yasmin to conclude. Any final questions or comments, Yasmin, and then if you would, to conclude.
I'm checking the questions. Sorry. One of the participants is asking about hands-on experience writing project seminar or camp. Normally, this is a webinar, and the purpose of the webinar is to inform people very briefly and create awareness and answer some questions. We also organize project writing trainings within the scope of the project. We used to organize those trainings in person before COVID, but unfortunately since March all our events are online. And we have already organized 2 different trainings on how to write a proposal. I think if you keep in touch with TÜBİTAK and with Merve Hanım, they will be informing you about these trainings, because we will have further trainings and proposal writing camps in the coming 2 years. So you can benefit from them. And last questions. I think
so just on that one, yes, I mean the next project writing training is scheduled for the 15th of October. It's not firmed up yet, but it's due on the 15th of October.
After
and of course,
the cutoff.
Exactly, and then we'll be focusing on Horizon Europe needs, of course. Sorry, back to you.
No problem. So I'm concluding the session. Thank you, Grigoris, Philip, and Merve. Bu seansımızın sonuna geldik. Dediğim gibi bu bir webinardı. Webinarlar detaylı bir proje nasıl yazılır eğitimleri değildir. Webinarın amacı aslında cut-off'a yakın yapmamızdaki amaç proposal'ını belirli bir seviyeye getirmiş olan firmaların takıldıkları konularla ilgili yardımcı olabilmekti. Biraz daha soru cevap ağırlıklı yaptık. Bugün kısaca üstünden geçtiğimiz bu başlıklar aslında Grigoris ve Philip'in üstünden geçtiği bu 3 başlık Excellence, Implementation ve Impact başlıklarıyla ilgili detaylı eğitimler daha önce verildi. Bunların kayıtlarını hem bizim proje web sitemizde ekranda göreceksiniz turkeyinh2020.eu hem de TÜBİTAK'ın resmi web sitesi bu Avrupa Birliği programı için h2020.org.tr'den daha önceki tüm etkinliklerin slaytlarına, sunumlarına ve bu tarz kayıtlara ulaşabilirsiniz. Daha detaylı derinlemesine bilgi almak isterseniz. 7 Ekim'deki cut-off için hepinize şimdiden bol şans diliyoruz. 7 Ekim'e kadar bundan sonra başka bir etkinliğimiz olmayacak. Ama Ekim'den sonraki etkinliklerimiz de 2021 Ocak ayından itibaren geçerli olacak olan Horizon Europe programı ile ilgili olacak. Bildiğiniz gibi Aralık sonu itibariyle Horizon 2020 dediğimiz program bitiyor ve önümüzdeki yıl itibariyle yeni bir program başlıyor. Bundan sonraki eğitimlerimiz de artık 2021 yılı sonrasında başlayacak olan yeni programa dönük olacak. Yaklaşık 12.30'a kadar bu Zoom platformu açık olacak. Eğer sorularınız varsa buradan yazabilirsiniz. Tüm soruların cevapları bugünkü eğitimin, webinarın kayıtlarıyla beraber biraz önce verdiğim 2 web sitesinde yer alacak. Katıldığınız için çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Umarım faydalı olmuştur. Bundan sonraki etkinliklerde görüşmeyi umut ediyoruz. Hoşça kalın. Görüşmek dileğiyle. Bye.
Görüşmek üzere. Hoşça kalın.
Bye.